All right, everyone, get ready for a deep dive today. We're tackling LLMs, large language models.
LLMs, yeah.
Those AI systems that can write like Shakespeare 1 minute and then break down a scientific paper the next.
Pretty amazing stuff.
It really is. And we've got some incredible essays here by AI expert Chris Tansey to guide us. He really digs into how LLMs are going way beyond just generating cool texts. They're actually starting to tackle real-world problems now.
It's a really exciting shift, you know. We're moving from LLMs as these impressive performers, linguistically speaking,
Right.
to LLMs as tools that can achieve specific goals. It's like, think about it. We've gone from, wow, look what AI can write, to how can AI actually help us in our daily lives?
And that's the key question, isn't it? Because as Tansey points out, LLMs do have this inherent limitation. They're brilliant with language.
Yeah.
But they don't have that intrinsic motivation that we humans do.
It's like they need a why to really excel. You can tell an LLM to write a poem about nature, and it'll produce something amazing, but it's not because it's been moved by a beautiful sunset or anything. Right. It's just following the prompt you gave it.
It's kind of like, training a dog to do tricks. It can learn to sit, stay, fetch.
Yeah.
But it doesn't inherently understand why it's doing those things.
Exactly. And that lack of intrinsic motivation, that becomes a real obstacle when we want LLMs to go beyond just generating text. Like if we want them to help doctors diagnose patients or, analyze legal contracts.
Yeah. They need a purpose.
They need a goal to strive for.
And that's where Tansey brings in this idea of goal-oriented frameworks.
Mm-hmm.
He talks about it in his essay, Task-Specific Objectives. Yeah. It's like we're saying to the LLM, okay, your job is to help doctors diagnose patients. And then we give it the tools and information it needs to actually achieve that specific goal.
Right. So instead of trying to build this, general purpose LLM, we should focus on tailoring them for specific domains, like Chris Tansey suggests. A general purpose LLM might give you some basic info about, say, a medical condition.
Sure.
But an LLM that's been specifically designed for healthcare, that's a whole different ballgame. It can understand complex medical terms, analyze patient data, even assist doctors in making diagnoses.
So we're moving from like a jack-of-all-trades LLM to an LLM specialist.
Yeah.
An expert in a particular field. But how do we actually make that happen?
Well, Tansey dives into some really interesting advanced prompting techniques in his essay on that very topic. And these techniques are all about how we can get the most out of LLMs by, really fine-tuning how we interact with them.
The one that really grabbed my attention was retrieval-augmented generation, RAG for short. So imagine giving the LLM access to this massive library that's constantly being updated. It can pull in the latest research, real-time data, anything it needs to do its job effectively.
Think about it. You wouldn't want your doctor making decisions based on medical textbooks from a decade ago, would you?
No.
They need access to the most up-to-date information. And that's what RAG does for LLMs. It makes them incredibly powerful in fields like medicine or finance, where having the latest information is absolutely crucial.
Okay, so RD gives them more information, but then there's automatic prompt engineering, APE. And this one sounds almost magical.
It kind of is. Remember how we talked about giving LLMs these clear instructions or prompts? Well, APE takes the guesswork out of that. It automates the process of figuring out the best way to communicate with the LLM to get the result you want.
So instead of us humans struggling to come up with the perfect prompt, APE does it for us.
Exactly. And it really helps ensure consistency in how we interact with LLMs, which is so important when we're talking about real-world applications.
Now, this last one, I have to admit, blew my mind a little. Few-shot prompting. It sounds like we're trying to teach an LLM with a bare minimum.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Instead of bombarding the LLM with tons of data, we just give it a few, but perfect examples of what we want. Like imagine you're showing a chef a couple of flawlessly cooked dishes instead of handing them a whole cookbook. They can still get the idea.
I see what you mean. And Chris Tansey says this is particularly useful when you don't have a ton of data to work with. You can still steer the LLM toward the outcome you want with just a few carefully chosen examples.
Absolutely. It's all about efficiency, making the most of what you've got.
Okay, so we've got these incredible techniques, RAG, APE, few-shot prompting, all geared toward helping LLMs achieve specific goals. But there's another layer to this, isn't there?
There is. And that's where Tansey brings in this concept of hierarchical task structuring. He explains it really well in his essay by the same name. Think of it like this. You wouldn't just hand someone a giant jigsaw puzzle and say, go solve it. You'd break it down into smaller steps.
Yeah.
find the edge pieces, sort by color, start assembling sections.
Right, makes the whole thing much more manageable. And it seems like that's what we're doing with LLMs, helping them break down these complex tasks into smaller, more digestible steps.
Exactly. And that's where things get really interesting. Tansey talks about some fascinating techniques for achieving this kind of hierarchical task structuring. And they got these interesting names, too.
Like chain of thought prompting, right? I was reading about that in Tansey's essay, Chain of Thought Prompting. Sounds like we're encouraging the LLM to think out loud, show its work step by step.
That's a great way to put it. And it's incredibly important for transparency. We want to understand how the LLM is arriving at its conclusions, not just get the final answer.
Yeah, especially in fields like medicine, right? Where understanding the reasoning behind a diagnosis is critical. You wouldn't want your doctor to just say, you have this condition, without explaining how they got there.
Of course not. And chain of thought prompting helps bring that same level of transparency to LLMs.
So chain of thought helps them explain their reasoning. But then there's tree of thought prompting, or TOT, and that one sounded even more complex.
It is, but it's also incredibly powerful. Imagine a chess player considering different moves, right? Exploring all these possibilities before actually making a decision. That's kind of what TOT does for LLMs. It lets them explore multiple potential solutions, like branches on a tree, before settling on the best one.
So instead of just following one linear path, it's looking at different options and weighing the pros and cons of each.
Precisely. And that's really valuable when you're dealing with complex decision-making where there isn't one clear right answer.
Okay, so we've got COT for transparency and TOT for exploring options. But how do we know the LLM is on the right track? Is there a way to kind of check its work?
There is. Tansey introduces this really clever technique called self-consistency in his essay, Self-Consistency. Basically, it's a built-in quality check. The LLM generates multiple solutions and then picks the one that's the most consistent.
So it's like the LLM is double-checking its own work to make sure it's not making any silly mistakes.
Exactly. It's a really smart way to increase reliability and make sure the LLM is producing high-quality output.
Okay, last one, and this one sounds super futuristic. React prompting. What is that all about?
Think of it this way. You're talking to a chatbot. You ask it a question. It gives you an answer. Great. But what if that chatbot could actually take action based on your request?
So instead of just giving information, it could actually do something.
Exactly. That's the idea behind React prompting. It's about enabling LLMs to not just understand and reason, but actually act on their understanding.
That's incredible. So instead of just a chatbot answering questions,
Yeah.
we can have a chatbot that books our flights, makes dinner reservations, even writes emails for us.
It's about shifting from passive information processing to active problem solving.
Wow. Okay, we've covered a lot here. Goal-oriented frameworks, these amazing prompting techniques. RAG, APE, few-shot prompting, kick, tick, 2T, self-consistency, React prompting. It's a lot to take in.
It is. But I think what's important to remember is that all of these techniques, all these ideas that Chris Tansey outlines in his essays, they're about moving LLMs from being impressive with language to becoming genuinely useful tools that can solve real-world problems.
It's like we're taking this incredible technology and giving it purpose,
That's it.
a direction,
Yeah.
a way to make a real impact.
Exactly. And that's where things get truly exciting. We're just scratching the surface of what's possible.
Welcome back. So before the break, we were talking about these, advanced prompting techniques, how they're giving LLMs a real sense of purpose. All those ideas from Chris Tansey's essays. It's fascinating, right? We're shaping their abilities by how we structure those tasks and by how we fine-tune how we communicate with them.
Like giving them a roadmap and a set of tools to, navigate those complex problems. And Tansey's insights on things like RAG, APE, few-shot prompting really highlights how we can optimize them for specific jobs. Exactly. And, one of the things Tansey really emphasizes, and I found this quite insightful, is the importance of understanding the inherent limitations of LLMs. They're incredible tools, no doubt.
Yeah.
But they're not a magic bullet for every single problem.
You're right. We can't just throw an LLM at any challenge and expect it to, magically come up with a solution. It's about using the right tool for the right job.
Absolutely. And that's where careful planning and design come in. We need to be really thoughtful about how we're integrating LLMs into different, systems and processes, make sure we're setting them up for success.
It makes me think of that saying, to a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Yeah.
We have to be careful we're not just treating LLMs as a one-size-fits-all solution.
Exactly. And that brings us to some, real-world examples, some things that Chris Tansey outlines in his essay, real-world applications of LLMs. Let's start with healthcare, an area where LLMs have the potential to, like, really make a huge impact.
Yeah, and it's something Tansey seems really passionate about. He spends a lot of time exploring how LLMs can be used to improve patient care and, assist doctors.
One example that really stood out to me was this idea of using LLMs to help with medical diagnoses. Imagine an LLM that can analyze a patient's, medical history, their symptoms, test results,
Right.
and then cross-reference that information with a vast database of medical knowledge.
So it's like having a team of expert doctors right there at your fingertips, all working together to come up with the most accurate diagnosis.
Exactly. And with techniques like RAG, the LLM could constantly be updating its knowledge, with the latest medical research, making sure it's always providing the most up-to-date information.
And it's not just diagnosing illnesses either. Tansey also talks about how LLMs could be used to personalize treatment plans, monitor patients remotely, even help with drug discovery.
The possibilities are vast. And as Tansey points out, LLMs could play a crucial role in, tackling some of the biggest challenges facing the healthcare industry, like rising costs, growing shortage of healthcare professionals.
It's pretty exciting to think about how this technology could make healthcare more accessible, more affordable, for everyone.
It really is. And it's not just healthcare. Tansey also dives into some really fascinating applications in the legal field.
Like using LLMs to analyze those legal contracts, right?
Exactly. I remember reading about that in his work.
It sounds like a lawyer's dream come true.
It could be. You know those super dense, jargon-filled legal documents that can take lawyers hours and hours to decipher? Well, an LLM could be trained to understand that legal language. And then, using techniques like chain of thought prompting, could break down those contracts step by step, highlight key clauses, potential risks.
It's like having this superpower legal assistant that can sift through hundreds of pages of documents in like minutes.
Exactly. And it could save lawyers so much time and effort, allow them to focus on the more strategic tasks.
And then there's education. Tansey talks about LLMs creating these truly personalized learning experiences.
It's an area with huge potential. I mean, imagine an LLM tutor that can adapt to each student's individual learning style, their pace, providing personalized feedback and support.
It's like having a personal tutor available 24/7. It could revolutionize how we learn.
And Tansey highlights the potential for LLMs to create more engaging and interactive learning materials, too.
Yeah.
Think of textbooks that can actually answer your questions, simulations that adapt to your actions, virtual labs where you can experiment with different concepts.
It's like bringing learning to life, making it more fun and more accessible for everyone.
These are just a few of the really exciting applications that Chris Tansey explores in his essays. And what's truly remarkable is this is just the tip of the iceberg. As LLMs keep evolving, we can expect to see even more innovative and transformative applications emerge across all sorts of industries and aspects of our lives.
It's incredible, to be witnessing this evolution of technology.
It really is. But as we kind of marvel at all the possibilities, it's also important to remember that with great power comes great responsibility, right?
Right, we can't just blindly embrace this technology without considering the potential downsides as well.
Absolutely. And that's something Tansey really emphasizes in his work. He urges us to think critically about the potential risks and challenges that come along with LLMs.
Okay, so let's dive into that a bit. What are some of the things we need to be mindful of as we, integrate LLMs into our lives?
Well, one of the biggest concerns is this potential for job displacement. As LLMs become more capable, performing tasks that were once done by humans, there's this risk that certain jobs could become automated.
It's a valid concern. I mean, we've seen it happen before with other technological advancements.
Right. And while some argue that, new jobs will emerge to replace those that are lost, it's important to think about the potential social and economic impact, of widespread job displacement.
It's not just about the number of jobs. It's about what kinds of jobs are created.
Yeah.
And who has access to them.
Exactly. And Tansey emphasizes the need for, policymakers and industry leaders to really work together to address these challenges and make sure that the benefits of LLM technology are shared equitably.
It's not just a technology issue then, it's a societal issue as well.
Precisely. And another thing that Tansey brings up is this potential for LLMs to be misused or even abused.
Oh, like spreading misinformation or creating those deepfakes.
Exactly. LLMs are powerful tools for generating, really convincing text, even images and videos. And as this technology becomes more accessible, there's a risk that it could be used for, well, malicious purposes.
That's a scary thought. We definitely need to think about safeguards, mechanisms to prevent those kinds of abuses.
Absolutely. And Tansey talks about how important it is to develop ethical guidelines and regulations for how we develop and deploy LLMs.
It's like with any powerful technology, right? Nuclear energy,
Yeah.
genetic engineering.
Yeah.
We need to establish clear rules and boundaries to ensure that it's being used responsibly.
Exactly. And it's not just about preventing misuse either. It's
Mhm.
also about ensuring that LLMs are being used in a way that, aligns with our values and that ultimately benefits society as a whole.
It's a really complex issue with a lot of different angles, but it's clear we need to be having these conversations now as this technology is advancing so rapidly.
We absolutely do. And I think Chris Tansey's work does a fantastic job of highlighting, both the immense potential of LLMs and this critical need for responsible development and deployment.
It's about finding that balance, right,
Yeah.
between innovation and responsibility.
Exactly. And it's a challenge we'll need to face head on as we continue to explore the possibilities of this, truly transformative technology.
And we're back for the final part of our deep dive into the world of LLMs. We've explored their potential, we've talked about the need for responsible development, and now, with Chris Tansey's insights to guide us, we're going to look ahead. What does the future hold for LLMs?
Well, in his essay, Future Directions for LLMs, Tansey points to some pretty remarkable advancements that could really, change how we interact with these models and how we use them.
I'm ready for it. What
Yeah.
kind of advancements are we talking about?
One thing he highlights is the development of even more sophisticated techniques for that hierarchical task structuring. Remember we talked about COTI, chain of thought prompting, and TOTI, tree of thought.
Yeah, those techniques that help LLMs break those complex problems down into manageable steps.
Right, exactly. Tansey believes those techniques are going to become even more refined, allowing LLMs to handle problems that are increasingly, complex and subtle. Imagine LLMs that can actually reason about different perspectives, way different factors, make decisions that take into account like a much wider range of variables.
So not just smart, but wise almost. Like
Yeah.
we're moving beyond just giving them instructions. We're teaching them to think critically.
That's a great way to put it. And that actually leads to another fascinating idea that Tansey explores, meta prompting.
Meta prompting. Okay, now that sounds interesting. What's that all about?
So instead of giving the LLM specific examples with meta prompting, we create these high-level prompts that kind of uh, provide structural guidance. Think of it like giving them a blueprint for how to approach a task instead of a step-by-step manual.
So instead of saying write a poem about a cat, we'd say create a piece of art that evokes a feeling of, I don't know, warmth and companionship. And the LLM figures out how to best express that, whether it's through poetry, music, maybe even a painting.
Exactly. It's about giving them more autonomy, letting them leverage their creative and problem-solving skills, in a more flexible way.
Mind-blowing. It's almost like we're moving toward a future where LLMs are less like tools and more like partners,
Yeah.
collaborating with us to solve problems, make better decisions.
I think that's a really good analogy. And, as this partnership evolves, Tansey reminds us that the need for responsible AI development, it just becomes even more critical. He talks about how important it is to keep doing research on things like mitigating bias, putting in ethical safeguards, and making sure things are transparent.
Absolutely. We have to make sure that these advancements don't come at the expense of, our values, our principles.
Exactly. And this is going to take a real collaborative effort. It needs to involve everyone, ethicists, social scientists, policymakers, technologists, everyone working together to shape the future of AI in a way that benefits, all of humanity.
It's a huge responsibility, but it's also exciting to think about all the potential for positive change that LLMs represent.
It really is. And as we wrap up our deep dive into the world of LLMs, I think it's fitting to end with this thought-provoking question that Chris Tansey poses in his essay, a question we should all be thinking about as this technology continues to develop.
All right, let's hear it. What's the question?
If LLMs keep evolving at this incredible pace, becoming more intelligent, more adaptable, more integrated into our lives, what does it even mean to be human in an age of such sophisticated AI?
Wow. That really gets you thinking, doesn't it? About the future and our place in it.
It does. It's a question that we'll need to really grapple with as we navigate this, uncharted territory.
Well, listeners, I hope this deep dive has sparked your curiosity about LLMs and shown you just a glimpse of the incredible possibilities and challenges that lie ahead. Chris Tansey's work shows us that we really are on the cusp of a technological revolution, and it's up to all of us to ensure that it leads to a better future. Thanks for joining us.